So good evening. Tonight we're talking a little bit about supply, and we're going to talk about quantity supplied, and we're also going to talk about our ceteris paribus conditions, which we've already discussed once in our other lesson, our demand video. And so on supply, that definition is going to be, the amount of goods or quantity of goods that a seller or a producer is willing to sell at a series of alternative prices. Now that's going to be in a designated market, as a designated time, at a designated place, and that's also going to be all things considered equal. And so then quantity supplied is defined as a specific price. And what's going to happen with that is it's referring to how much of a good or service that a producer or seller is willing to sell at a specific price. That's also going to be at a given time and a given place. And so today we're going to talk about apples, and we are going to make the Apple Festival in Erwin, Tennessee our home for our market. And that is going to be sometime, I'm going to guess, like the September 7th of 2015. It's usually the first part of September, sometimes even the middle of September. But anyway, so we're making a specific time and place. That's what's important. And so with quantity supplied, a lot of times what you see is when the price goes up, then we see that the amount that the farmers, the firms, the suppliers want to produce and want to sell is more. And so when that price goes down, then they're not getting as much bang for their buck, so they don't want to do it for that kind of money. So the amount they'll supply is less, or they might allocate, their farm to something else. But the amount of apples they might produce is less. Maybe they'll grow pumpkins or something else on that farm instead because that price is up. And that's, again, ceteris paribus, all things considered equal. So let's go ahead and draw a supply schedule just like we did the demand a while ago. And we're going to use price and quantity supplied as our variables there, and we'll give you a couple of scenarios. Let's go ahead and do 5 just like we did previously. And I'm going to say that, for this example, that in scenario A it's going to be 69 cents a pound, and at that price the farmer or the firm is willing, the orchard will give us 500 bushels. And so I'm not sure how that equates to pounds. I've never been a farmer, but, I know the apples can be bought in bushels. And so if we're willing to give them, and these are for premium apples, and they know these are good apples, and they can get a good price anywhere for them. But let's say if we're willing for this festival purpose, where we can get a high price for apples and they know it, that we're willing to give them 79 cents per bushel, then they will in turn give us and produce for us 700 bushels. And if at 89 cents a pound, they might be willing to do 800. At $1.09, they might be willing to do 1,000 bushels, and at $1.29, they'll do 1,200 bushels. And so, we can draw that out on a graph. You'll do the same thing that you did in the demand, because it's economics we're dealing with here. We're going to put the price on this vertical axis, and we'll give ourselves 5 slash marks there. And then we'll also go ahead and give ourselves 5 slash marks, little coordinate points, to be the quantity supplied. And we will talk a little bit about how to make this happen. So let's go ahead and plot out our amounts. So 69 cents, 79 cents, 89 cents, $1.09, and $1.29. I remember when this was the norm price for apples at the store. And so let's say that we do ascending order down here as well: 500, 700, 800, 1,000, and 1,200, and this is going to be in bushels. So, we need that information on here specifically. This is the price per pound. And so if you were reading this graph, you would have a clue what you were, what we were paying for how much, and how much we were getting for how much. So let's go ahead and plot out that information up here. And so this is going to be an upward sloping curve. So it's going to start down here at the bottom. In our scenario A, 69 cents at 500 bushels would be there. And we can do the next one, 79 cents at 700 bushels will be there. And 89 cents at 800 bushels would fall right in there on this curve. And then let's say that 1,000 at $1.09 is going to fall in there. And 1,200 bushels at $1.29 will fall in there. And so when we draw that graph, when we connect the dots, we get this upward sloping curve. And I've kind of missed that, but anyway, you get the point. It's an upward sloping curve, a little different than the downward sloping curve that we saw that came across this way in demand. And so if we were going to explain to you today equilibrium and, surpluses and shortages, we could go ahead and put that demand in there and explain it, but that's for another lesson. So let's talk today about some things that would affect those prices of, or not the prices, but the quantity supplied. And it could ultimately have an effect on those prices as well. But let's put a couple hash marks down here, and we'll talk about a couple of things. Taxes. And this also, taxes and subsidies kind of fall in the same category. But, when a farmer gets a subsidy, he's getting some help. Usually it's from the government. Might be because of a recent, catastrophe. It might be because, they need the product for something the government is doing. And it might even just be to help out a low, depressed economy or something. And so they could get a subsidy, and what that's going to do is allow them to produce more, and so that will cause an outward shift or a shift to the right in the quantity supplied. And taxes is going to be an expense. This is going to be something that costs the farmer money, so it is going to probably have an effect to shift this supply to the left or inward, which would affect the supply in a negative way. So it would actually probably drive your prices up because there's not as much supply overall in the market. And so what's going to happen when we have expectations? Now, farmers seem to have an innate ability to guess what's going to go on or follow a farmer's almanac. I know that my granddad did that. And so he would say, okay, well, every so many years there's just a rotation. This is what we're going to do, or this is what we're going to produce. And, nowadays I think that, a lot, let's just say in corn, that was the example in the textbook, they may hold on to their corn. They may put it in a silo or something and just not sell it right now because the expectation is that it's going to go higher later. So in them holding on to their product, they could cause an inward shift as well that would affect supply in a negative way. And so some of the other things that could happen would be competition or number of firms that open up. You could have more corn growers in Iowa next year, and this might even be because of subsidies or something. Some of these things could kind of marry with each other, but we would see that there would be more corn on the market, so there would be a produce. And then technology is another issue, and let's talk about genetically altered foods. If they can make more tomatoes grow per plant or more corn grow per plant, the yield per plant, then they're going to shift this supply curve outward by giving us more supply per plant. And so each farmer that might be growing, the same half acre in tomatoes could produce more tomatoes. So that's going to have an effect in a positive way on supply. And then last but not least, we'll talk about the price of inputs. Now, every farmer either goes to Southern States, Tractor Supply, somewhere like that to get his supplies. And so if the price of fertilizer goes up, then what will happen is that, he's not going to produce as much. He's probably not going to spend as much and produce as much because he can't afford to buy as much as he had the year before for his farm. So if he has these huge increases in things like this, then this is also going to cause an inward shift. And so just to reiterate, this inward shift is a negative effect on supply, so it's going to be less quantity supplied. And then this outward shift is a positive effect on supply. It's going to, and I'm using negative and positive in numerically, not at all in relationship wise, but it's going to increase the amount of goods that are supplied. And so it would be an outward shift or a shift to the right. And again, that's going to create more supply and, an increase in this quantity supplied. And then on an inward shift or a shift to the left is going to decrease the amount of goods that are supplied. So the quantity supplied is going to be less there. And so I hope I've answered a whole lot of those questions for you and told you a little bit about the quantity supply and the supply. And I'm sure we'll be looking forward to doing some more videos in the future.